In this video lesson, we'll investigate manifest destiny, the attitudes of the settlers as they moved west, the Black Hawk War, and the different trails that settlers could take as they moved west. In 1803, Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Territory from France, which doubled the size of the United States. 40 years later, America is still demanding more land. Manifest destiny, a term coined by John O'Sullivan, expressed the belief that it was the United States' destiny to expand from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean and into Mexican territory, from the Arctic to Latin America, and from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean, so that they would own the entire section that the United States currently occupies. Most Americans agreed. We're going to discuss this painting called American Progress more in class and look at it for symbolism about the term manifest destiny. Most Americans moved west for practical reasons, such as personal economic problems, the opportunity to own their own land, or to start a new life in the West. Farmers and miners, trappers and merchants headed west of the Rockies, seeking new markets. Ports in the Oregon Territory welcomed trade from both China and Japan. You can see in the map titled Population Density 1830 the number of persons per square mile that is currently in the United States, purple being the highest, and then on down from there. So if you look at the key and then you look at the sections of the United States, you can clearly see that Americans are starting to move west, and they're starting to leave the states that are already created and move into other areas and territories. By the 1830s, almost all the Indians had been killed or moved west of the Mississippi River. Some joined white culture, some fought white settlers, and some just continued to move. White settlers wanted to push the Indians out of the upper Midwest. A prophet told Black Hawk of a prophecy where he would lead the Indians to victory, and so he was convinced to lead a rebellion against the U.S. in Illinois and in the Wisconsin Territory. This ended in 1832 when the Illinois militia slaughtered more than 200 Fox and Sauk tribe members. As a result, the Indians lost and were forcibly removed to areas west of the Mississippi River. This is a picture of Black Hawk. Land between Indian and white settlements was known as the Middle Ground. As the Indians were pushed west, the Middle Ground continued to move west as well. By the 1840s, the Middle Ground was well west of the Mississippi, as the Indian Removal Act of 1830 and other treaties had pushed Native Americans off their eastern lands to make room for the settlers. The Middle Ground continues to move farther west. Indians sometimes attacked white settlers, but there were numerous treaties signed as well. The Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1851 gave Indians control of the plains, and the U.S. agreed to abide by this treaty and make annual payments to the Native Americans. The settlers continued to settle on Indian land, destroy their hunting grounds, kill all of the native buffalo and elk, removing their food system, and trampling the land. Subsequent treaties demanded that the Indians move from these lands, and these treaties, in a lot of cases, will not be honored by the U.S. government. There were other trails that were also taken by white settlers to go to different areas west. Many of these trails began in Independence, Missouri. Fearing Indian attacks, most wagon trains banded together at some point on the journey. The Santa Fe Trail was one of the busiest and most well-known avenues for trade, and the trail can be seen in this map. It led 780 miles from Independence, Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico. The traders would travel the Santa Fe Trail, exchange their goods for gold, silver, and fur with the Mexicans, and then return home. Marcus and Narcissa Whitman, who were missionaries, traveled to the Oregon Territory and set up mission schools to convert the Native Americans to Christianity and educate them. They wrote letters to the East praising the fertile soil and plentiful rainfall of the Willamette Valley in Oregon. Hundreds of farmers settled there, some arriving by Conestoga wagon, but most walked, pushing handcarts loaded with their possessions. Sicknesses like fever, diarrhea, and cholera killed many travelers on the long trip, which took months. You can see the map of the Oregon Trail leading from Independence, Missouri, and then traveling over west to Oregon. Not every trip west was successful. A party, known as the Reed-Donner Party, left Independence in May and attempted to take a shortcut to catch up with the rest of the group. It was important to make it across the Rocky Mountains before the November snows, and they were not able to do that. By the time they were rescued, only about half of them survived, and most of them survived by eating the flesh of the dead. The Mormon religion was established in 1846 by Joseph Smith. And Mormons believed that the lost tribes of Israel came to America and blended with the Native Americans, and that they are their ancestors. They also believed in polygamy, which means that a man can marry more than one woman and have more than one wife. For this, they faced discrimination, which forced them to move from New York to a sparsely populated area called Nauvoo, Illinois. Settlers in Nauvoo, Illinois printed protests against polygamy, and Joseph Smith and his brother destroyed their printing presses in retaliation. Smith and his brother were killed by an angry mob after being jailed for treason for destroying the printing presses. The Mormons were then led west under Brigham Young and moved until they settled in Salt Lake City, Utah. And there they remained isolated until the California Gold Rush. The Oregon Territory was claimed at one time by Great Britain and by the United States. As you can see in this map, you can see the green area being Canada, claimed by the British, and the yellow area being claimed by the United States. James Polk, an expansionist running for president, used the slogan 54-40 or fight. Basically what he wanted was the boundary between Canada and the United States to be here at this line, the 44-40 parallel. And he argued for that. It was more land than Polk actually wanted, and although he was edging towards war with Great Britain over this demand, there was no way that America could fight a successful war with Britain while fighting the war with Mexico. So in effect, he was bluffing. The bluff worked, and the two countries peaceably agreed in 1849 that the 49th parallel would be the boundary between the United States and Canada. This is the 49th parallel. And this is still the current boundary today between Canada and the United States. We'll discuss more about who traveled along these trails and what their experiences were like in class.